In this video, I'm going to teach you the best high protein foods for maximum fat loss. And so my name's Adam Bunnell. I'm an online fat loss professional, and I specialize in hormonal priming, body recomposition, and higher level forms of nutrition. I've helped hundreds of men from 7 different countries reach elite level body fat compositions, and this is the exact thing that I teach them when it comes to higher protein, low fat foods. So we particularly use carbohydrate metabolism to get our clients as lean as possible, and that starts with starting with a lower fat intake and a higher protein intake. So protein, for instance, has a high thermic effect. On the opposite end of things, fat has a 3% thermic effect. So with every single one of our clients, what we first of all do is lower the fat intake and raise the protein intake. So what we use is basically 1 to 1.2 times your body weight in protein to 0.3 to 0.4 times your body weight in fat intake. And why we lower the fat intake is we try to structure the body properly so it's primary use of carbohydrates for fuel. And the first thing we usually have to teach all of our clients and all of our clients one-on-ones is how to keep the fat low and how to get the protein high. And it really comes in the form of understanding what types of protein are the leanest and what types of protein have a little bit of fat intake. Because the men I work with usually typically like their beef, like their steak, and all of that's great. There's no bad protein food, but obviously when you're eating a sufficient amount of a higher fat protein, it does start to add up over time, over exceeding the amount of fat that we're trying to intake per day. So it is a kind of a skill putting certain things into place, putting certain foods into place that are going to be high in protein and low in fat. And today I'm going to show you a list of all the ones that we actually use. And so when tracking food, the first thing I teach all of my clients is that the best thing that you can possibly do is track your day of eating the night before or the morning of, and so you can stay under that fat intake goal, and so you can have a higher protein intake, because it's a lot easier to track the day of eating, switch some things around, than try to track it as you go. So if you make the plan up of hitting your macronutrients the night before, you don't have to do any work the day of, you just have to follow the plan. Yes, it takes you about 15-20 minutes the night before the morning of, and this is something that isn't something that you have to do every single day for the rest of your life. But this helps you understand how to put pieces together, how to take some things out, how to move some things around to correctly hit your macronutrient goals. So next, tracking in grams of ounces to get closer to that 1 to 3 gram range. So we track macronutrients specific to the gram. And why that is because calories affect your weight, macronutrients affect how you look, and micronutrients affect how you feel. So we particularly track macronutrients for the cosmetic effect it brings. And so macronutrients will give you that cosmetic look and also have a direct correlation to a lot of hormone panels and a lot of health markers as well. And so tracking specific to the grams and ounces allows us to get closer. So when we start teaching our clients this concept, we go through and we'll see, some of our clients tracking cups, which it's great. Like, I don't think there's a bad way to track, but it's a lot easier instead of cups tracking ounces. And so we can get a lot closer to a certain protein, fat, or carb goal. Next is weighing out dense meats as cooked. So I teach all of my clients to weigh their meats cooked. And why that is that the food that you put in MyFitnessPal, as opposed to what you actually weighed as, needs to correlate correctly. So if you are cooking rice and putting in your MyFitnessPal as rice and not putting it as rice cooked, but you're weighing the rice as cooked, obviously there's an immense discrepancy in the amount of volume of food, which is going to make an immense difference in the amount of calories that you're actually eating. So understanding how to track them correctly, and so we just make the flat rule to track all of our meats cooked. So let's kind of go through some actual food intake and what we actually show our clients when it does come to high protein foods, low fat foods. And so like I said, there's no bad protein foods. Obviously, you have low fat, high protein foods, moderate fat, high protein foods, and there's no really one size fits all. But it's particularly creating a plan that has minimal fat that doesn't exceed your fat intake but hits your protein intake. So, for instance, like a moderate fat, high protein food would be like salmon, bison, chicken, flank steak, sirloin steak, or 93.7 ground turkey. And so none of these are bad foods by any means, right? You can have a serving of salmon, and salmon's a superfood. It has polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats that are going to be good for overall health markers. But if you were to just eat salmon for your main source of protein, you're going to exceed a fat intake. If you were just to eat flank steak, you're going to exceed a majority of your fat intake. So what we use is, one, I teach my clients to use the serving size in your meal tracker as serving size of 1 ounce, and then put the number of servings that equals what we need to be eating per day. So let's say for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you've mapped everything out. For lunch, you're eating salmon. And you notice that you are X amount over in fat. And so you come in and you lower the numbers of servings of salmon to lower the fat intake. And then you can raise the leaner protein in your diet to meet a higher protein intake. And so it takes a little bit of learning, it takes a little bit of execution, it takes a little bit of trial and error, but what we teach our clients and why we teach our clients this is it's important to know where you're getting your fat intake, where you're getting your protein intake, and where you're getting your carbohydrate intake for overall nutritional knowledge. So these would be categorized as one, like a moderate fat, high protein food. And so the rule of thumb that we can teach here is that the wider the meat, the leaner the meat. So you notice how 93.7 ground turkey, salmon, bison, chicken thighs, flank steak, and sirloin steak are all relatively like a darker meat, besides maybe like a chicken thigh. And I want to kind of stop here and really understand the difference between chicken thighs and chicken breasts. So chicken itself is a lean meat. Yes, everybody knows that. But there's a difference between chicken thighs and chicken breast. It's the different part of a chicken. A chicken breast is going to be much leaner, and a chicken thigh is going to have more fat in it, right? And usually, typically, the foods that are higher in fat is going to taste a little bit better, but that's because fat is very satiating. So, like moving on into the high fat, high protein, low fat group is that the wider the meat, the leaner the meat, right? And so these are the foods that we teach our clients to eat, and we use the same concept. Use the number of servings and the serving size. So the number of servings of chicken breasts, and notice how chicken breast fat intake is very low, protein is very high. We can eat a sufficient more amount of a chicken breast and lower a salmon to mitigate even more fat intake, and we can raise protein intake with a lower fat goal. So let's say, for instance, you have salmon for meal 2, and then for meal 3, you have chicken as your main source of protein. You notice you're a little bit high in fats. Well, what you could go in and lower the actual salmon per serving in the grams and ounces, and then raise the chicken breast so we can have a higher protein intake and a lower fat intake. So another one's shrimp. Any type of white fish is really good and high in protein, lower in fat. Egg whites, tilapia, another white fish. Protein powder is a great one, obviously, yes. Cottage cheese. Tuna and water, which, obviously some of these foods aren't, super satiating. And tuna and water isn't your favorite food, but like it is a high protein, lower fat food if you're trying to eat something on the go. If you're at a work trip, vacation, or whatever, you're trying to hit a protein intake, you get a can of salmon, can of tuna, and you'll be good to go. But same thing applies. If I know they make tuna in oil, and we teach our clients we want to get the tuna in water, which is going to be a leaner source of protein with not as much fat in it, right? Even like over-the-counter deli meat, right, which is going to be very lean in protein. So like turkey, for instance, is a very lean protein. For instance, the Boar's Head turkey over-the-counter is going to have a 1.5 fat and 20 grams of protein, which is very, very low in fat. And obviously, like the deli meat turkey that you get like pre-packaged maybe not be the most with all the micronutrients in there and all preservatives, but the actual over-the-counter smoked Boar's Head turkey, for instance, it's going to be a lot more natural. It's going to be a lot more healthy, and it's going to have a high protein, low fat intake. Ground chicken and even fat-free yogurt, right? So there is a bunch of high protein, low fat foods that you can choose from, and there's none of them's going to be, I guess, on the sense like a bad or a good source of protein. It's the accumulation of all the food that you eat per day to meet a higher protein and a lower fat intake. And so when you categorize exactly the best types of protein, really there's no best types of protein. Protein, for instance, it's all relatively the same, all comes from a different part of the amino chain, but it's important to know your overall options of protein intake because, like I said, the first thing we teach our clients is usually typically to raise a protein intake and then lower a fat intake. And using this, you can understand where a lean source of protein could be and where we can mitigate fat intake within overall protein. And I would say this is one of the most misunderstood things that I see within today and with the clients I work with is just the misunderstanding of protein and the darker meats that a lot of men choose that have a sufficient amount of fat intake in it per serving, which does add up during the day. For instance, if you're going to use a bison cooked, 2-3 times a day, that fat intake is going to add up sufficiently. And then even going down into the percentage-wise, which isn't very widely known as well. And with the percentage-wise, as you see right here, 93.7 ground turkey, this is going to be the percentage lean to the percentage fat. So 93.7 means 93 lean, 7% fat. And you have 90-10, you have 80-20, 85-20, 85-15. You have, in some cases, 96-4, and then you make like 99. So understanding the exact fat to protein ratio is important as well, because you can simply read the label of the beef that you choose and choose a leaner cut. And so, it does matter. This does matter when it comes to understanding how much fat intake that you're accruing, because we need to understand where our fat's coming from to moderate it to a sufficient degree. So anyways, this is exactly what I teach each and every single one of my clients when they first come into the program, and I would say it's the most common thing that we see is the overconsumption of fat and underconsumption of protein. So if you like these type of videos, like, comment, and subscribe. I do videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just teaching all of you guys about higher level forms of nutrition, how I can best help you guys get to a leaner physique. So if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications so you get my video on Wednesday, and I'll see you soon.